Hello everyone, welcome back to another chess openings and theory video. Today we'll be going over the Italian game. Now, the Italian game is a little bit more complex than the French defense, this is what we covered last time, so I will be going over more in depth. So, let's first start off. What is the Italian? Well, the Italian is pawn to e4, pawn to e5, and then you will play knight to f3, knight to c6, and now instead of playing into Ruy Lopez, the Ponziani, you will play bishop c4. This is the Italian game. You see, Stockfish says the Italian game is very popular and one of the oldest openings in chess. White develops the bishop to a good square where it controls the center and targets f7. This opening is very easy to study and one of the best choices for beginners. So, what will we encounter? So, after the move, bishop c4, in order to distinguish between black's major replies, there is bishop c5, which is very standard, called the Cuccio Piano. And going back a move, there is knight to f6, the two knights defense. So, what is the best move? Stockfish says d3, d4, knight here, knight g5. So, if you're playing the knight's defense, obviously it will be here, targeting this pawn, which will become a weakness. Black is going to want to strike into the center, blocking this bishop's attack onto the pawn. And what's white's best move? Just simply take. It attacks the knights, so the knight will jump. Now you'll go check. And white already has a 0.2 advantage, which of course is minuscule. If they block with this pawn, I believe the correct move is to take. Yes. And now if knight takes, it pins to the king, and now your advantage is +6. The best move is probably to play h3 or d5. Sorry, d3. d3, I would assume, is just developing, getting a piece out. Best move is to attack. I would probably play here. It's more aggressive than knight f3 because it puts pressure on this bishop, so it has to decide if bishop goes to h5, I would assume that g4 is probably a good move. Brings the game back to equal. It's not bad, you know, it's very aggressive. The bishop kind of has nowhere to go, right? For example, all these squares are covered. So let's say white develops, and black wants to attack the bishop. It will jump to 0.6 after takes, and here the bishop is simply trapped. There's nothing that can be done. So going back a few moves, that is a more aggressive line, but you know, if you play here, bishop here, you could simply play here, stop the pawn. So it's not that good. So if you play knight back, obviously it's more passive, right? Because now your knight is pinned to the bishop. You kind of completely let go of the f7 square. Black will be able to consolidate, you know, with moves like queen to b6, attacking the bishop, putting pressure on this pawn in the future. Now you'll not be able to develop your bishop easily. Moves like bishop to d6 as well, just developing, getting ready for castling. So, if black plays queen b6, what's the best move? Bishop takes c6 check. The point of this is that now black's pawn structure is kind of weakened if they take with the pawn, and if they take with the queen, you will just be able to castle and be better. Right? This pawn is defended by the queen. Bishop takes would of course remove the defender, but after a simple developing move, this rook defends the knights, and everything is defended, and white would be just better. See, for example, if we're take, it's already +1 for whites. Here it is +3 after queen takes. Obviously, it's more aggressive. It attacks this pawn. So there is a queen trade that could happen if takes. Your only move is to play here, weakening the king. It is a +1 advantage, just because of how more active you are. Your king is in safety. You will play rook e1 in the future, develop your bishop, develop your knights, and you already have 2 pawns in the center. So, what should black play? Well, Stockfish says the best move to play is, of course, long castles, putting pressure on this pawn, getting your king to safety, developing a rook. White simply should just respond bishop to e3, putting pressure on this pawn, attacking. So now let's go back a few moves. Here. Now what if they play bishop c5? Well, the classical reply is to play c3. So we're playing a cagey structure, but preparing the move. Oh, I apologize. c3. Preparing the move d4, attacking this bishop. And if you really want to play aggressively, you could play b4 into the Evans gambit. For example, if the knight develops, you will play here to the Evans gambit, attacking this bishop. But it's better than the Evans gambit because now the pawn is actually defended. So the bishop will have to run back, and now you can strike in the center with a move like d4, attacking this pawn. Best moves are probably knight takes, of course, which will simply push this. Never mind, I'm sorry. That would, of course, hang f2, which is not good, so you'll play here, defending this pawn, keep this pawn defended. And going back a few moves, of course, a more classical line after the move c3 is instead of playing there, you could of course play knight c3 and then knight f6 and d3, or d3, knight f6, and knight to c3. These are really interchangeable. There is no difference. They both accomplish the same thing. Equally ancient but much more solid, and therefore always moderately popular through never a big hit. This is called the Gucci Pianismo, meaning very quiet game, clearly indicating that this is not the way of the despiser of material. A more modern, of course, would be the move c3, being more aggressive, throwing your pawns into the center. D4, prepping. The bishop goes back. White is already winning. 1.7 advantage, you will simply take. And black, in this case, if we looked at it a few moves ago, playing, pushing, or taking was -6 because after knight takes, you have this large attack on the f2 square. But now, in this position, it's much different because there is no pawn blocking the queen. So you will simply play queen here. And, you know, of course, if bishop takes, you simply walk the king. It is not that big of a deal. If knight takes pawn, you take the knights. And now this knight is pinned, so it cannot take. Black's best response is to castle. And look at what Stockfish says. It is already plus 7.9, plus 8. You are just winning. So once again, just to look at this line. So after the move, c3, Black's an aggressive line for white to play, is the move d4. And if the bishop runs to here, you will play takes, and Black will say, hey, that's a free pawn, and I'm lining up a good attack. This is a very natural response if one does not look into it. Immediately just looking at it, say that's a free pawn, and I'm building up a large attack. You'll simply play queen d5, attacking, attacking, attacking. Right? After takes, king up. They will take this pawn, defending mate in one, obviously, because the queen does see the bishop. That's their only move that's winning. You win the free knight, and you are just much better here, plus 8.2. So now, what happens if they take, instead of playing bishop b6, which is a more passive move, or playing bishop at d6, which once again is a very passive move, because after this move, what is it? Knight takes d5, takes d5, e4, knight g5, bishop e7. This is plus 2, because this pawn is hanging, this knight is hanging, and eventually you are throwing big shots at the f7 pawn, which of course will always be a weakness for Black no matter what opening you play. So if you play d4 and takes, your best move is to take back. They will most likely give a check, but you simply put your knight here and look at that center. Yes, they could take, but you can always castle, play queen b. You could play queen b3, kicking out the bishop. You could play queen e2, which I imagine probably is not a good move. For, yes, it pins the knight to the king, but let's just look at it. Minus 2.6 after the amazing move d5, hitting the bishop and simultaneously defending the knights. So queen e2, not a good move. So their best move obviously here is to take. You'll simply play queen b3, hitting the bishop. Now if they take, obviously take with the pawn. Their ideas of sacrificing the bishop for a check. After here, the king runs. Now you take queen here, and it's -1. Yes, the king cannot develop, but there is just an overwhelming attack on this king. You can defend with the bishop, but after queen takes, it's simply not good. -1.1. Black will consolidate, will win the bishop. There are attacks on the knights, but that really doesn't matter. So, going back to this position, what happens if they play here? Move 4, Evans Gambit. The whole point of the Evans Gambit is for Black to take this pawn. Because what does it do? What happens if you take? The best move is to attack this bishop with c3, developing with tempo. Because you will play a quick d4, attacking once again if the bishop goes here. Best move in the position, because after takes, there is one defender and two defenders, and only two attackers on black. So, black will be down in exchange if takes. You might be thinking, look at the eval bar, it is already +7, so that is no good for black. So after takes, the best move, bishop to b6, and this is an equal position. You will push the pawn, have just a suffocating center. The knight must hop. It could go to e7, it can go to a5. a5 seems like the better move. Why? Because it puts pressure on this bishop. This bishop is not defended. You could play a move probably like queen a4 trying to hold on, but that is most likely a bad move, -1, because it's a, after takes, black consolidates. You are just too slow, they will castle, and once you castle, they are just simply better. They will start to put pressure on the position, and white will be in trouble if they are not careful within the next few moves. So going back, after pawn to d5, nice here, you'll want to simply drop the bishop back. d3 is a perfectly fine move, and after here, you might be thinking queen a4 check, but once again, not a good move, because after bishop blocks, here is minus. After pawn takes, the knight can jump in, and it's really just not good for whites. So, after knight a6, just drop the bishop back here, just simply castle, and you will be better. Black might try and play here, but simply knight c3, you do not care about that threat. They will naturally develop, trying to castle. And now, this is just an equal game. You simply play chess from here. So going back into the Evans gambit with the move b4. Now what happens if they make a mistake? Not a mistake, sorry. But what happens if they play knight takes in the Evans gambit? Because the knight still can't take. Once again, you will play c3, kicking this knight out, developing with tempo with the move d4. This is once again very good position. Yes, Stockfish is 9.5, but white has an overwhelming center, and no matter what takes, the bishop or the knight in this, you will play c3, kicking that out, and then d4, attacking the center with tempo. So let's go back a few moves. That is the Evans gambit. What happens if they play knights here, the two knights defense? Well, you will obviously play knight g5, setting up attack on the f7 square. After d5 takes, knight here, bishop check, you will want to take, and drop the bishop back. Now this position is equal. Black will try and take the center. Just simply drop, not take the center, but develop a flank pawn on h6, attacking your knight. Simply drop the knight back. Bishop takes is not a bad move, but it's a rather dubious move. Yes, you double white's h-pawn, but you're really trading off pieces that haven't even been developed yet. You should develop first, and then, because that allows white to castle and be better. So now let's go back a few moves. You develop here. Now what if they play a move here, and now you play here, knight takes, here, knight takes. What if they play bishop here? It's already +1. Why? Because after the move takes, once again it attacks this. If knight takes, you will play knight takes, and after bishop takes, well, why is it 0.6? Why is it +6? Because you can either play queen h5, threatening mate, or even sacrifice the bishop, because after king takes, you will play queen h5 check. If this pawn tries to stop it, you win the bishop, attacking the rook. Very bad for black. This is in trouble. Obviously there are moves like knight f6 or queen f6 trying to stop this, but black's king, even if they play a move like here takes, it is bad for black because of how open their king is. So now, why would they play king takes? Why not play knight takes? It is still an equal position, but black's king is just very weak. Yes, they will play rook e8, but you will simply keep developing. And, right, obviously this rook e8 idea, white simply castles. Yes, they will lose this pawn, but now you could play here. And after knight takes, king takes, bishop takes, this position is -2 for white. But let's say they make a peculiar move. It will immediately jump up to equal because they have to play the best moves every time. And what are the best moves? d6. Right? If they play, let's say, b5, it will immediately jump up every single time, no matter what it is. It will jump up. As long as it is not d6 or king to f8 or king f7, they have to find those moves. And then white will play rook e1 eventually, right? e6, rook e1 check, very natural move. King has to run. You will keep developing, threatening rook e8. For example, let's play black plays here. It will immediately jump up. So yes, this position is -2, but black has to play absolutely perfectly every single time to be able to hold that -2 advantage. So let's go back. If you castle, obviously it is not that stellar of a move. You would want to play f3, defending the pawn, and then castle, because after d5, right, best move is castles. Maybe they'll play bishop here. You simply take, bishop takes, and now just push this pawn, once again attacking the bishop, sort of taking the queen side initiative. Bishop will run back. You have knight b3 ideas in the air, pawn to h4 ideas, sort of launching a kingside attack, because this king is very weak. You're going to want to exploit that by attacking it every chance you get. Let's go back a few moves. Those are very obscure lines, I know. So what if in this position, sorry, let's go back a few more moves. After the move d5, let's say they do not take, they want to defend the pawn with a move like this. Well, as you can see, that is immediately +9. It's very easy to win because it hangs the bishop. So they don't want, like I said, their best move is to take. If they play anything other than takes, move the bishop, it will be +1, 1.5. If they take, after takes, it's equal. Their only move here in this position is to take. If they play any other move besides pawn takes pawn, white is simply much better. So let's go back. They play here. What other moves are there? Well, you can play d3. What is the point of d3? Well, it's just play c3. Now I know what you're probably thinking. Why would you play d3 to play c3? That doesn't work. That doesn't defend anything. Well, after knight takes and you castle, you kind of have just a fortress. The bishop cannot come in and play check. The knight cannot come in. The knight cannot come in here. You just have this fortress as white that is very hard to attack. Black will try to play here to stop you from pinning. You will play here to, once again, it's defended. Black will have to drop the bishop back. And white just has an overwhelming majority of its pieces in the center. Very easy game. You just want to keep launching your pawns onto the queen side and look at what white has done with these pawns. All of them just take up so much space. This is why it is very good, because if you castle, right, there are b5 moves in the future. Sort of, you can play here, but it does drop to -1. But for example, if black is not careful, like let's say they take, queen takes, rook takes, knight takes. Okay, so I see, because after there, so you would want to play bishop here, attacking the rook. Rook drops back, and now you can take, right? White did let a rook go, but black sacrificed 2 pieces to get the rook, and a knight and a bishop will simply always be better than a rook in the long run. They are worthless, so that means that they could be used more aggressively than a rook. And a knight and a bishop coordinated can easily beat a rook, whether it's an opened or a closed position, as long as you have good coordination. So let's go back a few moves. So after the move castles, the best move for white is to play rook e1, sort of laser beaming this file, and black's response should be h6, and you will simply play h3. Going back, let's say they play bishop to e6. You'll simply trade the bishop. After pawn takes, you have 2 doubled pawns in the center. Now 2 double pawns in the center could control central squares if they were pushed. Now let's say black had a pawn here and here, or even a pawn here and here. That would be much better than these 2 passive pawns, because they control more central squares. They really are kind of passive here. And Stockfish evaluates this position as +4. White should play bishop here, targeting this bishop, wanting to trade, getting black's active pieces off the board. If white takes, obviously rook takes is the best move. So now let's go back a few moves. What happens is in this position they play bishop d7. If they play bishop d7, once again, you will play either h3 or bishop b3. If you play bishop b3, the best move is h6, and then if they play h6, you will play h5. If they play knight here, you will attack the center. They will play something like takes, play takes, and white has the advantage here. Going back a few moves, what happens if they play queen here? Defending the pawn. Once again, you will play bishop e7, looking to defend this pawn. Now if takes, c takes, d4 is the best move, obviously. But what happens if you play bishop takes? Well, this is not a good move because there is too many attackers on the bishop. You're losing the bishop. So you will want to play pawn takes. And now what if we have here? Once again, you'll just trade the bishop. And you will be +7 in this position, which is very nice for whites. Going back a few moves. If you play here, what happens if they play knight here? Well, this is a bad move. As you can see, Stockfish starts to slowly encroach the +1. Your best move is going to play is either queen d2, bishop e3, like we've discussed in future, or this move I've talked about earlier, pawn to b5 ideas. Pawn to b5, right? Very aggressive. It attacks. If here, you'll simply drop the bishop back. You do not want to trade that off. And after pawn takes, this rook just sees everything. This is definitely the better rook on the file because it hits the knight, it hits the bishop, and it hits the rook. This rook cannot see past, but this rook sees everything. So, what is black's best move in this position? Well, very natural move. Bishop b6, defending the knight and getting your bishop out of the corner. So what's black's best move? I'm sorry, what is white's best move? Well, you can either play queen d3. Queen d3, I imagine, is a good move. Or you can play bishop d3, which just defends the pawn. That is the point of both of these moves, to defend this pawn. Then it's on this square. Knight a3 would not be a good move because you're cutting this rook's dominant control over this file off. For example, I will show you now. Knight a3 is a suggested move by Stockfish, but the eval bar, as you can see, will drop just because after knight here, you cannot take this knight because, I will show you, it immediately drops because the rook now sees. So you will not want to play knight a3 in this position just because it cuts your rook's sight of the file off. Now, let's go back a few moves and discuss other positions or variations. So, I covered the three best moves. Bishop d3, bishop d6, bishop e6, h6. What happens if they play knight to e7? Well, you will want to develop your knight, and now they have a few more moves. They have this idea of rerouting the knight to g6. They have c6 ideas or bishop e6 ideas. What happens if they reroute the knight? Well, your best move is to strike the center once again, like we have discussed with the bishop e7 ideas or bishop d7 ideas. But if they play here, well, this time you will not want to trade off because trading off will lead to just them being able to consolidate, get a much stronger center, and just being able to hold against your attacks. So you're going to want to drop your bishop back, And now there are a multitude of moves here to play. Rook e8. You know, they could play h6 as well, or even strike the center. This is a very complicated center to play in, because after the move pawn takes, black does have a lot of ways to take back. If they take with the knights, you will simply take, and after knight takes the pawn, you will play queen here, threatening this. The best move is just reroute the knight back. So let's go back a few moves. If you take here and they take with the bishop, it is +3. This is a bad move. After here, if knight takes, rook takes, and now you just have control over this entire e-file. They will never be able to play rook here, because as you can see, Stockfish does not like that move even more. After rook takes, it's just controlling everything. Knight takes is even worse move. Stockfish jumps up again. So their only move is a queen move, as you can see, starts to lower. Let's go back a few moves. So that's what happens if they take with the bishop. What happens if they take with the queen? Well, it's even worse. You will simply once again play knight takes, and the best move to play here is knight takes. You will play rook, attacking this queen. They have to be careful, because after you take with the rook after this trade, your queen will be hit, their queen has to run, and white will just continue to have a dominant center. There is queen f3 ideas, just putting more pressure. There is rook to a3 ideas. There is even bishop to b2 ideas. So now let's go back. That's what happens in those variations. What happens if they play rook e8? Well, there are many options. The best one is either h6 or bishop to d3. Not h6, sorry, h3, or even. But Stockfish really likes, once again, dropping these bishops back. Black will probably play here, once again, and we already know what happens in this position. We have already discussed it. So, going back, I hope that the Italian game has been able to help you learn the Italian.